This is the Trading Psychology Podcast. This is VP, creator of No Nonsense Forex and author of the book No Nonsense Forex Trading Psychology. And with me, as he is every episode, is the man who never gets fatigued. He doesn't go to sleep. He sleeps standing up. He's the GOAT, Rob Reinhold.
Thanks, Patrick. I actually wish that was true sometimes. In lots of times in my life, I wish that I didn't have to sleep. And I know a lot of people love sleep, but to me, I always think, how much could I get done if I didn't have to sleep? It's almost like a chore that I need to give my body rest. So yeah, I would love to run through life that way. And you say never fatigued. That's actually not true because I try to run through life without sleeping and end up getting fatigued. It's weird.
Kind of the opposite of me. When I'm awake, I go, but I cannot wait until my head hits that pillow. I still take naps, and I will probably always take naps. But anyway, this episode, Rob, it's more about something called decision fatigue. Now, listeners at home, if you haven't figured out at this point, we either come up with something brand new, like we did last time with planting bamboo, or we take episodes from the past and take certain concepts of those episodes or combinations of concepts from those episodes and drill down even further into episodes that I think are very relatable, that people can actually kind of wrap their hands around and say, oh yeah, I suffered from that before, or I suffered from this now, or I still see some of these things creeping into the way I trade, and it's concerning. And I think this one is pretty common, if we're being honest with ourselves. So pay very close attention to this episode as we go ahead and start, as we do with every episode now, and define terms. So Rob, this is your creation. So go ahead and define terms in your own words, and I'll let you know if I agree or disagree. I'll probably agree.
All right, thanks. Decision fatigue is an actual thing that's been studied quite in depth. I mean, if you type in, decision fatigue in Google, you're going to be led to actual studies where they've really studied this, and it's a real thing that causes people to underperform. So I'm just going to read the definition here. Decision fatigue is a state of mental exhaustion where the ability to make further decisions is impaired after a series of choices. It's the feeling of being mentally drained and overwhelmed when faced with numerous or complex decisions. All right, so numerous and complex decisions. That absolutely hits trading, and that absolutely hits people that are shorter term in nature, who have larger stakes going on. So again, if you are over position sizing and you're doing a lot of trades, boy, it's really going to lead to the point where you just don't have the capacity to make the right decisions. It's why we at Maverick are not big fans of scalping and day trading. Theoretically, it can be done, but can it be done at a high level for years? And this one right here, decision fatigue, is absolutely going to be a drag on that.
But this goes both ways. This pertains to people who scalp. It also pertains to people who trade on the daily chart. And I am living testament to this. I have a very busy day. Sometimes, and I know at a very certain time of the day, a very exact time of the day, I need to be in front of my charts and start making decisions. Problem is, life doesn't always cater itself to that schedule. But I know if I'm going to do things optimally, I have no choice. So that can be very stressful in its own right. I can be making all these stressful decisions minutes leading up to that time where I have to turn my charts on and start making real money decisions. And I am not in the best headspace at all. There's no way I'm not still thinking of the 5 decisions I just made for that day and the consequences of those decisions and the decisions I have to make still before the day's over. And I know a lot of you have full-time jobs. A lot of you maybe have several jobs, and you're making a ton of decisions too, not only at work, but when you're off of work, completely independent of having to sit down and trade. So this goes for scalpers. This goes for daily chart traders too.
And it also goes for anybody who's human, because life is complex out there. The times of my life where I've had this decision fatigue has always been like, I feel like I can keep trading under wraps, I can keep my business under wraps, but then when the personal life gets involved, the family, the relationships, that's when it gets really heavy. And I definitely am not in the right state of mind to trade.
100%. And so now that we have defined the actual terms and showed how it relates to different types of traders, let's make this even more relatable, Rob. What are some of the signs, the actual symptoms and signs that we need to look for in terms of what causes decision fatigue?
I think the most common one is a feeling of being overwhelmed. I think that one is just such an easy one to say, oh my gosh, I might be in this place of decision fatigue because I am absolutely overwhelmed. So any of the times you felt overwhelmed, I think it's a really good time to stop and step back and say, maybe I'm not in the right place to make good trading decisions. That to me is my number one way to tell if you have it. So then we can just break down, okay, what does feelings of overwhelming, like what does that mean? You can be irritable to where like, if I have to make one more GD decision, I'm going to lose my mind, that kind of stuff. Irritability, brain fog, where you say, I just can't deal with it right now. How many times in your life have you said that? I just can't deal with that right now. Like one more thing, I can't deal with it. That comes with mental exhaustion and decreased willpower. So these are the things that they've studied. They've actually studied these things and said, hey, when you hit this point of decision fatigue, these are the things that are going to happen to you. Sometimes people get headaches, but it really comes down to, sometimes it is just apathy, where you just don't care anymore. So these are all the signs to let you know that you're not in the right place for trading.
I can remember vividly having this and some of the really bad decisions I made as a result. You have those days where there's so much going on and it's stressful and you're just having a bad day overall. It started bad. It's still bad. You woke up with a headache. You still have a headache because now you're stressed. And all of a sudden, here comes trading time and you can see it on your clock and you're like, fuck, it's the last thing I want to do right now. So what I would do, I would open my charts and Murphy's Law, my charts would be giving me like 6 or 7 signals and like 4 of those would be on the euro. So now I got to do math and divide my risk and stuff like that. And I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to pick one trade and that's the trade I'm going to make and I'm going to ignore the rest. Optimal? No. Stupid? Probably. But that's, you know what? I was so angry at the fact that I actually had to sit down and trade, even though it's literally only for 10 minutes a day. It was just too much. And as a result, I ended up making a pretty poor decision. I don't even know how that trade ended up, but I know that that is not the optimal way to trade. And the margin of error in this game is so small that if you're not trading optimally all the time, I'm not sure what you're doing. You're probably wasting your time in this game if you're not doing everything you can to optimize. And if you're going to sit there and make one trade when 6 were on the board just because you were all tired and pissy, absolutely the wrong move. And I am guilty of it too, but it does not make it right.
Well, Patrick, that is the theme of this entire podcast, is that the things that are going on in your brain, whatever it is, and again, we've done a bunch of episodes to where it's almost endless, creates these feelings and impulses that cause you to make non-optimal decisions. And that's why this decision fatigue is so bad, is because again, these are all the things that they've studied. They say it depletes your self-control. So your self-control that you had yesterday or last week, you no longer have it. So the decisions you make, it could be very impulsive. Or on the flip side, they could also be very conservative. And this is the one that I actually have seen more often than not, is that people say, you know what, I'm going to be conservative, or I'm just going to not do it, or I'm going to be safe. I'm going to sit this one out. I actually see that as more common than the impulsive actions. And we've all talked about the impulsive actions, but these conservative ones where you say, I'm going to err on the side of safety. I'm not going to take this trade because of this. I actually see it more in being more conservative than impulsive. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Well, that's really interesting because I think the example I gave, even though I was being rushed and stressed, that I still ended up making the more conservative decision by under trading. So I guess my question back to you, Rob, is that's the answer you really don't expect. So why do you think it's that way? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because of binary outcomes. And trading has a very binary outcome of win or loss. And every trade we make, it is binary in nature. You win or you lose that trade. So when you are looking at this decision and you have this binary choice, binary choices have a lot of stakes involved. They've got a lot of emotion, and especially if you've got a decent amount of capital on the line, all of a sudden that becomes a very big decision and a lot of personalities. It actually leads to inaction. Now look, for me, it leads me to action. I'm one of those where I'm going to make the impulsive decision. Most of the traders I see, though, it's going to cause them to pull back because of that binary nature of right or wrong. You know what? It's too much for me to handle right now. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm just going to step back. That's where I think is the most likely situation.
Yeah, and some people might be sitting there right now and saying, well, might that be a good thing to kind of dial it down a little bit and make a more calmer, more rational decision by trading less, by not making an impulsive decision? I would say no, it's not, for the reason I just stated before. Optimal is optimal, right? And if you at least are trade the no nonsense Forex way and like the Maverick way, and with any system that has, logical money management attached to it, missing out on a big winner affects your account more than taking a loss would. And so if you're going to get overly conservative and purposely pass up on potential long-running trades, I don't see that as a formula for success at all. And why? Because you weren't feeling good that day, because you were stressed. It's like, come on, get over it.
For me personally, I saw this a lot when I was a young trader. I started back in the 90s where there was not nearly the trading community as there is today. There was a few books, and we were all just trying to figure it out on the fly. And a trading system or a trading plan was literally just what was in your brain at the moment. And this is where I personally saw this decision fatigue, where again, I was day trading. I was putting myself in these situations that were really, had too much position size. They were binary in nature. And by the end of the day, I remember my first day trading, I went down to the Maverick trading office, went there, sat there all day, made one trade. It was on Sienna. I still remember it. And I sold it for like a $20 gain. And I drove home and my wife asked me, hey, how did it go today? I said, I'm exhausted. I got to take a nap. And I did take a nap. All of that because I was simply trying to make every decision that day on every stock that I looked at every chart I looked at. And by the end of the day, I was completely wiped out. That is just decision fatigue right there. And then early on in my career, I also ran into getting stuck. Now, we've talked about this, and maybe, Patrick, we should do a whole episode on getting stuck in a trade. I shouldn't say we all, but I think most people who have got into trading, you have gotten stuck in a trade. What it means is that you got in, it went against you, you should have gotten out, and you didn't, and you're stuck. And as this thing continues to work against you, you know that you should be getting out of it, but you literally can't click that button. You can't click that button because every single tick that thing is going lower, you're now making another decision of, oh my gosh, it just went 10 pips lower. Should I get out? Again, you're making these decisions and then it just went another 10 ticks lower. Should I get out? All of a sudden, you get stuck. And what usually happens when people get stuck is the thing goes against them so far that they finally say, F it, I want out. I can't take this anymore. And they bail. And they bail at the point where the emotions are the highest, which means it's the point where the market is the most likely to reverse. I see this all the time. So getting stuck is definitely tied up in this decision fatigue because you've been making so many of these little decisions of should I get out, should I stay in, and you've been making those and you've been conservative where you didn't want to take the loss. And finally, at some point when the emotions are the highest, you literally can't take it anymore. And so you just bail. I did that several times as a young trader, and you could have almost marked my exit with the bottom on the chart. Has that happened to you, Patrick?
It has, but when I was much younger in my journey, and I'll explain why. But first off, before I forget, when it comes to getting stuck, I want to hear people's stories about this, especially if you're a no-nonsense Forex trader. Now, the vast majority of you listen to this on audio, but this also goes to YouTube. If you want to go to YouTube, you can look this episode up and go down into the comments and tell me, as a no-nonsense Forex trader, a story about you getting stuck and what that was like. Because, and the reason I say this is because I've traded with indicators most of my trading career. And I started off trading overbought, oversold like most people do. And that's when I would get stuck. Because if you guys understand overbought and oversold indicators, really what you're waiting for that thing to do when you're in a losing trade is to turn back over. And if you can just get that indicator to turn and not stay in that territory all fucking day, that's when you start making your money back. And so sometimes you just sit there and wait for that to happen. And then sometimes it just never does happen. Or it does, but you've lost so much money, you're like, okay, now I got to wait even longer for this trade to go more my way, and I can come closer to breaking even. And then, like you said, Rob, right as soon as those words come out of your mouth, the indicator turns back into overbought territory, and you just continue to lose more and more money. And then what do? In my case, it was I let the whole thing run to zero, and that's exactly how I blew out a couple of my accounts. So that was a really big problem. Once I moved into trend trading, it no longer happened because if it was time to exit a trade, my chart would scream that at me. And that made it a lot easier for me to say, okay, I got to stop thinking I'm smarter than my charts because that's exactly how I blew accounts out in the past. So for me, that transition from reversal trading to trend trading saved me from getting stuck. But I'm really curious to hear stories from some of you guys if there's another way you can get stuck in a trade based on such a clearly defined system with clear rules. So I know I just kind of half answered your question there, Rob. I did. I don't now, but I do remember when it happened because, man, I don't think I'll ever forget those times. Sitting there waiting for that indicator to turn and it just doesn't it's absolute torture.
This is the best case for a young trader to be trading in a prop firm because you have that risk manager or risk management system that will boot you out of a trade to where you can't get stuck. And I know that sounds harsh. We call it forced discipline at Maverick. And we pitch it as this is good. You need this sometimes, especially in the beginning when you don't have your discipline down. You need someone, the big bad guy, big brother, to come in and kick you out of your trade that you're stuck in. I know it sounds brutal. I know it sounds mean, but it is the best case for why you need risk management behind you.
And I will even go as far as to say that this is why you need a prop firm like Maverick. Because I don't think, honestly, Rob, you've been in your system for so long, I don't think most prop firms nowadays do this. I think they're only there to make money off of you. And as soon as they're not making money off of you anymore, or they see that you're losing more than the desk fees they're collecting, they just simply let you go. You're not a person, you're a number.
Well, actually, I'm going to add into that because they are actually better at risk management than we are. Like we'll let traders go into our capital and we'll make the decision to write it out or to exit it. Theirs is all automated. Like they just cut you off without any remorse, without probably even an email. It's just, you're done. See you later. Goodbye. Now look, that is getting you out of a stuck position, which is really good, but it's really not kind and it's really unforgiving.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, is that best for the trader? It's best for the institution, probably, sure. But that's the question you always have to ask yourself. Is it better for the trader themselves? in my case, because everybody knows my story, as soon as I joined, I started losing my ass. But I eventually came out of it over time. If I was with a firm that would have cut me off right away, that might not have been the case, and I would have been devastated. And who knows where I would have gone after that? I might have stopped trading. Who knows? So yeah, the right prop firm with the right systems in place, I agree, really, really makes a difference. But if you're not part of a firm like that, or if you're not part of a firm at all and you're just trading on your own, you're going to need some type of solution, some type of self-governance here. So Rob, we have a few listed. What's your favorite way in terms of how we accomplish that?
Well, the first one, and really the only one we need to talk about, is you just follow your system. But our entire podcast is about all the times you don't follow your system. And so to just say, don't do it, follow your system, be robotic, we need to have a little bit more than that, because it's why we have our podcast, is because it's really hard to follow your system all the time. So that's really the only answer of how to fix it. Whatever your system is, just follow it, because you've already predetermined all of your actions. That's what a trading system is. You have predetermined everything you're going to do, so when you get in that situation in the market, you don't have to think about it. You just have to act. That is what a system is all about. Because we are imperfect people, then we have to talk about the extra things. But the only answer is follow your system, period. But since we're human, here's the one I like. Don't think in binary outcomes. When you get into a trade, and again, that trade, you're either going to be in profit or in loss. That's the only outcome that can happen. Okay, break even, but let's just call that a loss for commissions and stuff. So it's binary. We talked about this in an early episode about not thinking in individual trades, but thinking in blocks. Thinking in blocks of 10, thinking in blocks of 25 trades. Hey, I want to have this win-loss and this profit factor over my next 10 trades. All of a sudden, do you see how that gets you out of that decision fatigue, where you don't have to make these really big decisions because you're looking at these 10 trades, these 25 trades, and say, hey, I've just got to make good decisions on more than I make bad decisions on, or follow my rules on these. So for me, stop thinking in binary nature. Start looking at things holistically. Start looking at things over the year. Hey, I want to make this percent a year. It's much better than looking at every single trade as the biggest thing you've ever done. And that's hard to learn as a new trader. I remember my first trades were the only thing that mattered in the world. There could have been a world war and I wouldn't have cared. I just cared about that trade. But once you've traded for a while, then look at this big picture of you're going to do this for your whole life. You're going to make whatever amount of trades you make every year. You're just trying to get positive expectancy.
Yeah, and along those lines too, we talk about the absolute non-negotiable importance of having a trading journal, and of how the comments section is the most important part of that journal, because that's where you chronicle how, where, and when you messed up. Over time, I began to become petrified of having to put in any kind of entry into that comment section. And I would make sure, no matter how I felt that day, how rough my day was, that I would do everything I could to make sure I did not make a mistake that would later have to get put into that trading journal. So fear of my own journal entries really kind of got me out of this. I think is one of the things. Maturity might have been another one, but one of the things that immediately got me out of this this cycle, because I would experience this all the time, even though I was trading the daily chart, because I put a lot on my plate. I still do. I put more on my plate today than I've ever been. I figure while I'm young and smart and have the resources, I want to try to build and grow and make as much money as I possibly can, just in case a really bad downturn comes, or in case there comes a time where I'm not able to do it as much anymore. I'm striking while the iron is hot. And so every single day when I sit down to trade, I've told you guys this, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do this. So I'm already in a negative headspace. One of the things that also helped me, and consistent listeners of this podcast, you already know that I'm doing this. I have kind of become forced to move to the weekly time frame. And, I did it because I was missing entire days and sometimes 2 days at a time of signals, and that is super suboptimal. So even though weekly has its own problems, I'm giving it a try because I think it's overall going to be better overall than a guy like me trading the daily. And let me tell you, from a mental perspective, it is like I'm on vacation. I check in on Friday. I don't even have to check in Friday right towards the end, because what's a weekly candle going to do in the last 3 hours on a Friday? Probably not much. So I have this nice wide window, 1 day a week where I have to go place trades. Sure. I'm in the greatest headspace possible. It's phenomenal. And, a lot of people get really nervous and concern themselves with news avoidance in our system, rightfully so, because it's always changing. I pretty much ignore all of the news, minus maybe a presidential election, in the weekly chart. And I have not, so far, a small sample size, I have not been any worse for wear as a result. So the mental toll it has taken away from me simply by moving one time frame higher, wherever you are. If you're trading the 15-minute, move to the hour to the 4 to the daily to the weekly. That could be just what the doctor ordered. If anything, it's going to take a lot of pressure off of you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think, with this concept of decision fatigue, the less decisions you're making, the better you're going to make the decisions you do. I 100% agree with that. And then our last idea is automation. We had a whole episode on automation. We're both quite positive about it, but we had our caveats of, hey, make sure you do it right. But this is where automation just rules. You are no longer making decisions in the moment. You've completely removed yourself from the equation. You are going to trade your system perfectly because you've literally programmed it. There are no decisions to make because they've literally been predetermined and pre-programmed to happen. So if this is something, again, you're struggling with, look into automation. And frankly, everyone has done some automation, like a stop order is just simply automation. A trailing stop order is some sort of automation. Automate as much of your actual orders, the getting in, the getting out, and you've removed a lot of the decisions that you're going to have to make and potentially make some psychological mistakes around.
And I will say, as correct as this solution is, I think it was episode 50, we did a whole episode on how there are advantages to it, but it is not perfect. There are certainly caveats, and there are certain deal breakers with an automated system that some traders just don't want to deal with. On top of that, I doubt that if you're running an automated system right now, especially a fully automated one, you don't have much of a need to listen to the Trading Psychology podcast. So I'm going to be willing to bet that most of you don't do this, and you're discretionary traders like I am. So things like this could be very helpful to you. So I hope that Rob and I were able to explain and identify the pieces of decision fatigue, because I will bet it affects every single one of you to a certain degree. And so identifying it, realizing the symptoms, realizing why it's bad, and most importantly, it's the solutions you can use to help either fix it all together or just maybe alleviate some of it. A little goes a long way here. I hope we were able to do that for you in this episode. So on that note, thank you all for joining us here at the Trading Psychology Podcast. Rob and I will both see you next episode.
Goodbye, everybody.